She called me crazy in front of the judge, and in that moment I felt the entire world collapse around me, every whisper, every stare, every silent judgment pressing down on my chest like I could not breathe. My name is Alora Vance, and this is the story of how the truth almost got buried alive in a courtroom in New York, and how I refused to let it die. The courtroom was cold that morning, colder than anything I had ever felt, and it was not because of the air conditioning, it was because of the way people looked at me, like I did not belong, like I was already guilty before I even spoke. My stepmother Evelyn stood there in a perfect suit, her face calm, her voice smooth like honey, but her eyes, they were sharp, like she had already won. And when the judge asked her to speak, she smiled slightly and said, "Your Honor, my stepdaughter has been mentally unstable for years. She imagines things, she creates stories, she is not well." And I froze. Those words hit harder than anything she had ever done to me before, because this time it was not just inside our house, this time it was in front of everyone, lawyers, strangers, the judge, people who had the power to decide my life, and I could feel my hands shaking as my lawyer leaned toward me and whispered, "Stay calm, Alora, we will prove everything." But how do you stay calm when someone is erasing your reality right in front of you? I grew up believing family meant safety, but everything changed after my father died. He was my anchor, my protector, the only person who truly saw me, and after he was gone, Evelyn changed overnight. The kind woman disappeared, and someone cold and calculating took her place. She controlled everything, the house, the money, even the way people saw me. She would smile in public and tell everyone I was sensitive, but behind closed doors she would lock doors, hide documents, and tell me no one would ever believe me. At first, I thought maybe I was overreacting, maybe grief was making things worse, but then I started noticing things missing. My father had left me everything in his will, or at least that is what he told me before he died, but suddenly Evelyn claimed there was a new will, one that gave her full control, and when I questioned it, she laughed and told me I needed help. She said I was imagining things, and that was the first time she planted the idea that I was not stable. I remember the night I found the old documents hidden behind a loose panel in my father's study. My hands were shaking as I pulled them out and read his real signature, his real words. Everything was there, clear and undeniable. He had left everything to me and named me the rightful owner of his business, his properties, everything. Evelyn had lied, and worse, she had stolen it all. I confronted her that night, and I will never forget the way she looked at me, not scared, not guilty, just amused, like I was a child playing detective. She told me no one would believe me. She said she had already prepared for this moment. She said if I ever tried to expose her, she would make sure the world saw me as unstable, and I laughed at first, because it sounded insane, but now standing in that courtroom, hearing her words, I realized she had been planning this all along. The judge looked at me carefully as Evelyn finished speaking, and for a moment I could see doubt in his eyes, and that terrified me more than anything, because doubt is where truth begins to disappear. My lawyer stood up and objected. He said, "Your Honor, these claims are baseless and irrelevant to the case. We have evidence that proves the will was forged." But Evelyn's lawyer was quick to respond. He said, "Her mental state is directly relevant, Your Honor. We have medical records and witnesses." Medical records. My heart dropped, because I knew exactly what she meant. Evelyn had forced me into therapy months before this. She told the therapist I was struggling with paranoia. She controlled every session, every conversation, and I was too broken at the time to fight back, and now those sessions were being used against me, twisted into proof that I was not credible. The judge allowed it, and suddenly it felt like the ground beneath me disappeared. Witnesses came forward, people I barely knew, employees, neighbors, even distant relatives, all repeating the same story, that I had been acting strange, that I was emotional, that I believed things without proof, and each word felt like a nail sealing my fate. I wanted to scream, I wanted to stand up and tell them all they were wrong, but my lawyer squeezed my hand and told me to wait. He said, "Trust the process." But how do you trust anything when the truth is being buried under lies so carefully constructed that they look real? Then Evelyn looked at me and smiled again, that same quiet, confident smile, and in that moment something inside me changed. Fear turned into anger, and anger turned into determination, because I realized something important. She was not just attacking me, she was underestimating me. When it was finally my turn to speak, I stood up slowly, my legs weak, but my voice steady. I told the judge about my father, about the promises he made, about the documents I found, and the way Evelyn changed after his death. I could feel the room shifting slightly. Some People leaning in, some starting to question things, but Evelyn, lawyer, interrupted, constantly trying to paint my words as emotional as unstable. Then came the moment everything changed. My lawyer presented the evidence we had been saving, the original documents authenticated by an independent expert, the hidden panel in the study, photographs of it, videos of me finding the papers, everything carefully documented. And for the first time, Evelyn's face changed, just for a second, but it was enough. But she was not done yet. She claimed the documents were planted. She said I had created the entire scenario to support my delusion, and once again the room filled with whispers and doubt returned stronger than before, and I felt the pressure rising again, like I was about to lose everything. That was when my lawyer did something unexpected. He asked the judge for permission to present one final piece of evidence, something we had kept hidden until this exact moment, and the judge agreed. And as the file was opened, my heart pounded so loud I thought everyone could hear it. The screen lit up and a video began to play. It was security footage from my father's study, dated weeks before his death, and there he was, alive and strong, speaking directly to the camera, explaining everything, explaining how he feared someone might try to change his will, explaining how he had hidden the original documents and left clues only I would understand. And then he said something that made the entire courtroom fall silent. He said, "If anything happens to me and my daughter is called unstable, know this, she is the only one telling the truth." I felt tears burn my eyes, but I did not look away, because for the first time I was not alone in that room. My father's voice filled every corner, and every lie Evelyn had told began to crumble in front of everyone. The judge leaned forward, his expression completely changed, now focused, serious, and when the video ended there was a silence so heavy it felt like time itself had stopped. Evelyn tried to speak, she tried to object, but her voice was no longer steady, her confidence gone, replaced by something else, something closer to fear. The judge called for a brief recess, but everyone knew the truth had already shifted, and when we returned the atmosphere was completely different. No more whispers, no more doubt, just anticipation. The final ruling came hours later, but it felt like years. The judge spoke clearly and firmly. He declared the presented evidence valid. He recognized the original will as legitimate, and he stated that the attempts to discredit me were deliberate and malicious. And then he said the words I will never forget: the court finds in favor of Alora Vance. In that moment, everything changed. The weight that had been crushing me lifted, and for the first time since my father died, I felt like I could breathe again. Evelyn stood there frozen, her perfect image shattered, and as she was escorted out, I realized something powerful: the truth does not need to scream, it just needs to survive long enough to be heard. After the trial, I rebuilt everything slowly: the business, the house, my life. But more importantly, I rebuilt myself, because what Evelyn tried to take from me was not just money or power, it was my identity, my voice, my reality, and I refused to let her win. People often ask me how I stayed strong, and the truth is I was not always strong. There were moments I wanted to give up, moments I almost believed her lies, but something deep inside me kept fighting, something that refused to let the truth disappear. And if there is one thing I learned from all of this, it is this: never let anyone define your reality, never let someone silence your truth, no matter how powerful they seem, because the moment you stop believing in yourself is the moment they win, and I was never going to let that happen. She called me crazy in front of the judge, but in the end the truth made everyone else question their sanity, and that is something no one in that courtroom will ever forget.